Happy 31st birthday, my mother-in-law announced, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that always warned me something rotten was coming. We were seated at an upscale restaurant, the kind she loved to show off in, chandeliers glowing above us, gold-trimmed menus, a pianist playing soft music in the background. It should have been the perfect evening. It should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the moment my life snapped in two. She slid a crisp envelope across the table. The entire family watched. Everyone except me was smiling. I already knew this wasn't a birthday card. But I opened it anyway. Divorce papers. Neatly printed. Already notarized. My name spelled perfectly, how thoughtful. A soft gasp escaped the table next to us, as if strangers could sense cruelty better than the people who practiced it daily. My mother-in-law leaned back in her chair with pride. From all of us, she said with a smirk that screamed victory. My husband lifted his phone, recording, not to catch the memory, but to capture my humiliation. Their personal entertainment. For a full 3 seconds, no one breathed. I felt every eye on me, waiting, hoping, to see me break. But I didn't. I simply folded the papers neatly, placed them back in the envelope, and said calmly, "Thank you." Their smiles faltered. I signed them with the restaurant pen, handed the envelope back, stood up, and walked away, silently. They thought they had destroyed me. But they had no idea what I had already done. Part of our storytelling community. If tales of strength in the face of betrayal resonate with you, please hit subscribe. It's completely free and help support more stories of women reclaiming their power. Now let's see how this. I kept walking toward the exit, each step steadier than the last. The cold night air outside felt like freedom wrapping around my skin. Behind me, through the glass doors, I could still see them staring, confused, disappointed, almost offended that I hadn't collapsed on command. They expected tears. They expected a scene. They expected me to fall apart like a puppet whose strings they had cut. Instead, I disappeared into the night with my head held high. The valet brought my car around, offering me a sympathetic smile. "Rough night?" he asked gently. I smiled back. You could say that. What none of them knew, not my husband, not his mother, not the smug relatives across the table, was that I had already met with my attorney 2 months earlier. I had already separated my finances. I had already secured my assets. I had already moved half of everything into my own name, legally and quietly. And I had already gathered evidence that would turn their smug celebration into sheer panic. This wasn't a defeat. This was a checkmate. As I drove away, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold. My heart wasn't breaking, it was awakening. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into their world, years smiling through disrespect, years pretending the cruelty was just jokes. But tonight marked the beginning of something new. Something they never saw coming. Something they would regret. The next morning, the video of my reaction was already up on my husband's private family group chat. They really thought they had captured something devastating, a tragedy, a breakdown, a wife destroyed on her birthday. But all they got was a woman sitting still, silent, and composed like a storm preparing to choose its own direction. The comments under the video ranged from laughing emojis to fake sympathy. She took it better than expected. Wow, she didn't even fight. Guess she knew she wasn't enough. If only they knew what that stillness really meant. I watched the video once, not to feel hurt, but to memorize every face. Every smirk. Every cruel sparkle in their eyes. People reveal who they truly are when they think they've won. And last night, they all thought they had finally broken me. It was almost amusing how predictable they were. I closed the chat, took a deep breath, and let the peace inside me settle deeper. Because today wasn't about reacting. It was about preparing. My lawyer, Claire, called right as I was making coffee. "You ready?" she asked. "More than ready," I said, opening the folder she had helped me build over the last 8 weeks, bank statements, hidden investments, business shares my husband had no idea I owned. He thought I was the naive wife who didn't understand finances. He thought I believed every lie he fed me about work expenses. What he didn't know was that while he was cheating emotionally and financially, I was documenting every slip he made. Claire laughed softly. They're going to choke when this hits. Oh, I know, I replied. I want them to. By noon, my husband's mother called me. I didn't answer. She tried again, and again, until I finally picked up just to see what performance she had planned for today. Her voice was sharp, panicked. Why did you leave like that last night? You gave me divorce papers, I answered plainly. I signed them. What else was there to do? You were supposed to be upset, she snapped before catching herself. I mean, we just wanted honesty. Honesty. From the people who planned my humiliation like a birthday surprise. It was almost funny. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply said, "You'll hear from my lawyer soon," and hung up. Not even 2 minutes later, my husband texted me, "We need to talk. Now." But he was 3 months too late for that conversation. Instead of responding, I packed a small overnight bag, grabbed the manila envelope Claire told me to keep close, and headed to the place I knew they'd be, his mother's house. They always gathered there the day after a big moment, replaying it like a victory, laughing, drinking, celebrating someone else's pain. But this time, the celebration would end differently. I pulled into the driveway and saw all their cars lined up, just like I expected. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I felt steady. Grounded. Powerful. Tonight, the tables were going to turn. And this time, I would be the one watching their reactions. The moment I stepped through the doorway of my mother-in-law's house, the room fell silent. It was the same living room where I had spent years pretending to be part of a family that barely treated me as human. Now, they watched me like I was a ghost walking in the daylight, unexpected, unsettling, unwanted. My husband stood up first, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion to something close to fear. His mother froze mid-sip, her wine glass suspended in the air like she was afraid to breathe. I closed the door behind me, slow and deliberate. No rush. No hesitation. Just control. My husband spoke first. What are you doing here? His voice carried the sharpness of a man who had lost control of the script. I came to return something, I said, lifting the manila envelope in my hand. His mother scoffed. If you're here to beg, I don't beg, I replied calmly, cutting her off with a softness that was more powerful than anger. I placed the envelope on the coffee table. Nobody reached for it. Nobody blinked. Go on, I said gently. Open it. My husband hesitated. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the documents, page after page, his eyes widening, breath thinning. I watched the color drain from his mother's face as she leaned forward, reading over his shoulder. Evidence. So much evidence. Unauthorized withdrawals. Personal spending disguised as business expenses. Money funneled into accounts he thought I didn't know about. Investment reports showing my legal ownership of assets he claimed were his. Screenshots. Receipts. Recordings. Statements. Everything. My mother-in-law's voice cracked first. Where did you get all this? From the man you thought was stupid enough to betray me, I said calmly. My husband slammed the papers down. You set me up. I shook my head. No. You set yourself up. I simply documented it. For the first time, I saw panic settle into his bones. Real panic. The kind that comes when a man realizes the woman he underestimated was the only one who ever knew the whole game. His sister spoke up from the corner. So, what does this mean? It means, I said softly, that the divorce you all were celebrating last night will not go the way you planned. My husband swallowed hard, the weight of consequences finally landing. You can't do this, he whispered. Watch me, I replied. His mother lunged forward, anger overtaking her fear. This is blackmail. It's documentation, I corrected. And the court will love it. The room erupted, whispers, accusations, panic, everyone scrambling to find a way out of the mess they had built. But I stayed still, calm, unmoved. The power they had spent years ripping away from me had returned in one quiet moment, when they realized I wasn't the victim. I was the threat. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I paused just long enough to say, "You should have chosen a different birthday present." And then I walked out, letting their fear hang in the silence behind me. I drove straight to the venue of my mother-in-law's upcoming luxury birthday party, the one she had been bragging about for months. She called it the social event of the season, a night where she would pretend her family was perfect and powerful. A night where she would flaunt her status, her connections, and her son, the successful husband she believed I never deserved. I parked outside the glass building, watching the staff prepare inside. Crystal chandeliers, gold decor, a massive cake shaped like a crown, everything screamed arrogance. But the thing about crowns? They fall the hardest. I walked inside with the same calmness I had used the night before. The event coordinator spotted me and smiled. "Mrs. Hale, you're early." "Just wanted to finalize a surprise," I answered. She nodded cheerfully, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. I handed her a sealed USB drive and a printed script. "This needs to play during the tribute segment," I instructed. "Of course," she said brightly. "No questions. No hesitation. Not yet." By evening, the venue was packed. Guests arrived in glittering dresses and tailored suits, ready to worship the queen of manipulation. My mother-in-law walked in wearing a silver gown, her chin high, her confidence radiating like a spotlight. She was ready to shine. I was ready to shut the lights off. My husband, standing beside her, kept glancing at me nervously as I greeted guests with soft confidence. He tried to corner me twice, but I simply walked away. He didn't deserve my words. He deserved my silence. When everyone was seated and the lights dimmed, the announcer stepped up. "Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy a special tribute for our beloved Eleanor Hale." The audience applauded. Cameras came out. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, placed a hand dramatically over her chest like she was receiving an award. The screen lit up, soft music, pictures of her childhood, her wedding, her early years as a mother. She smiled proudly. The guests nodded admiringly. Everything looked beautifully staged. And then the music changed. Soft piano. Slow, haunting. Not the song she chose. The one I chose. The screen faded to black. Then a title appeared. "For the family who taught me everything." The room quieted. My mother-in-law frowned. My husband's face paled. The next slide appeared, bank statements. Unauthorized transactions. My husband's name highlighted. Then screenshots of messages with his mistress. Photos of the two of them entering hotels. His recorded phone calls mocking me. Gasps spread through the hall like a shockwave. My mother-in-law stood up. "Turn it off. Turn it off right now." But the coordinator shook her head helplessly. "It's locked, you approved this earlier." The video continued. Evidence of her involvement in pushing me out of the family business. Her manipulation. Her recorded insults. Her plan to humiliate me on my birthday. People turned to look at her. Not admiration. Not respect. Just disgust. My husband rushed toward the stage. "Stop this," he shouted. "No," I said firmly, stepping forward. My voice carried through the hall. "This is my tribute. To the family who expected me to stay silent." Every face turned to me. And to the woman who decided not to. Silence. Heavy. Electric. It was the turning point. The moment they finally realized. I wasn't just taking revenge. I was taking back my life. The room was frozen, every face suspended somewhere between disbelief and horror. My mother-in-law's perfectly planned luxury birthday party, the one she claimed would be a night to remember, had become exactly that, just not in the way she imagined. The final slide faded from the screen, and the lights slowly returned, revealing the wreckage of their pride scattered across every expression in the hall. Guests whispered behind manicured hands. Couples exchanged uncomfortable glances. A few quietly stepped away from the family, as though betrayal were contagious. My mother-in-law tried to steady herself, gripping the edge of a table as though the floor beneath her had tilted. How dare you?" she hissed at me. I stepped forward, calm as ever. "No, Eleanor," I said softly. "How dare you think I wouldn't fight back?" My husband stood beside her, red-faced, shaking with a fury he didn't know how to contain. But beneath that anger, I saw fear. The kind that comes when a man realizes his lies are no longer safely hidden behind a wife he assumed would stay quiet forever. "You ruined everything," he spat. I raised an eyebrow. "No. I revealed everything." His jaw clenched. "You could have talked to me, you had years to talk to me," I cut in. "You chose someone else every time." The music that had once filled the hall now seemed mocking, echoing off the golden walls like a reminder of every mask this family had worn for years. I glanced around, taking in the scene, Eleanor trembling, guests avoiding eye contact, my husband standing helpless in front of a truth he couldn't deny. And then I took a breath, steady and full of finality. "I'm done," I said simply. "With the lies. With the humiliation. With pretending this family ever treated me as one of their own." I reached into my purse and pulled out the finalized divorce documents, revised with my attorney's additions. "I've already filed. You'll be served formally tomorrow." My husband's eyes widened. What? You thought I'd walk away with nothing?" I asked gently. "You taught me better." Eleanor lunged forward. "You won't get a cent, you signed the prenup addendum yourself," I reminded her, smiling. "Remember? The one you didn't bother to read because you assumed I was stupid?" Her face collapsed into shock. "I'm not taking revenge," I said calmly. "I'm taking what I earned." I turned toward the exit. Guests parted like the sea, giving me a path out, not out of fear, but respect. The kind I had never received from the family I once tried so hard to please. Just as I reached the door, a voice called out. "Wait." It was my husband, breathing hard, desperate. Was any of it real to you?" I paused, looking back over my shoulder. For a moment, there was the ghost of the man I once loved, fragile, hopeful, lost. "It was real," I answered softly. "Until you made it a performance." His shoulders dropped. My mother-in-law stared at the floor. The hall remained silent. I stepped outside, inhaling the cool night air, the air of freedom, of rebirth, of a woman finally choosing herself. And for the first time in years, I smiled. If this ending gave you goosebumps, hit the like button right now. My favorite moment was when Adrian said, "You okay, love?" and every face in the room fell apart. What was your favorite moment? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories of women rising stronger than ever.